evening. Thoughts of Christmas make people lighthearted, but the general strike against the abolition of undocumented workers makes us freeze in our thoughts these days. Migrant workers keep on fighting for their rights, but will hopefully be able to smile on a spring day after the cold winter. This is the Multilingual Migrant Workers News broadcasting for the second week of December. First up, the Migrants' Trade Union goes on a sit-down strike in the National Human Rights Commission of Korea. Since December 5th, MTU and civil organizations have been going on a sit-down strike in the NHRC. They are demanding the release of Anwar and an apology from the NHRC for the recent disregard of migrant workers' human rights. On November 14th, the NHRC decided the probation precept issued by the Immigration Bureau was legal. MTU and human rights communities strongly opposed the decision, and on December 7th, the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions declared that the migrant workers' rights must also be respected. In their declaration, they say the NHRC overlooked the Immigration Bureau's illegal crackdowns as a habitual practice. On the fifth day of the strike, the 10th of December, a member of the National Assembly's Democratic Labor Party, Kim Hae-kyung, came to a place of the strike to support the workers, saying, "The Democratic Labor Party is going to try to improve migrant workers' human rights and help form international solidarity." In this strike, one MTU activist, Radhika, was arrested in Ijeongbu and was detained in the processing center. She has been a spokesperson for women's migrant workers' opinions on MWTV. Her arrest shows again that migrant workers' human rights are not respected in Korea. Hopefully, the NHRC will hear the voice of migrant workers, as the NHRC does say it is striving to create a more humane world. The NHRC held a debate over amending the immigration control law while the migrant workers were on their strike. The next news article is about the legal crackdown of migrant workers. On December 6th, it was announced that foreigners can refuse the illegal questioning by a patrolman in the debate over improving the anti-human rights immigration control law in the joint meeting of human rights organizations in the NHRC. A member of Sympathy, a group of public lawyers of the Beautiful Foundation, and lawyer Jung Jung-hoon said that the Immigration Bureau officials are illegally searching and controlling the workplaces without any warrants for checking migrant workers' movements. They must receive an order of protection which will give migrant workers the right to determine whether this order is proper or not. If this claim is approved, will all the migrant workers be able to work without any restrictions? The discrimination prohibition law of the NHRC may be the answer we hope. The NHRC will introduce the discrimination prohibition law next year. It will prohibit the discrimination of gender, ability, disease, age, race, skin color, and appearance on all statutory forms, and further details that the discrimination of employment, education, and services is forbidden. On December 8th, the NHRC announced the tentative plans for this law and said it would drive this law forwards after collecting the public opinion and debate of all committee members. The tentative plans for the law place the responsibility of infringement on the harmer and introduce a system of compensation for damages due to discriminatory activities. Now, the NHRC gives non-compulsory advice, but in this law, the NHRC will be able to impose compulsory dues up to 10 million won if the law is not observed, even after orders to correct discrimination. Also, the NHRC supports civil suits made by victims and will pursue cases if orders of correction are not received or followed. Hopefully, the discrimination prohibition law will help increase migrant workers' human rights. Next, we have labor news. A nationwide movement to secure the rights of undocumented workers and investigate the murder of farmer Jung Yeon-chol was in a nationwide movement held in Jongmyo Park, Seoul. About 3,000 people, including laborers, farmers, and students, gathered together. In this nationwide movement, people ask for the introduction of a law that will secure migrant workers' rights and ask for an investigation of the truth about the causes of the farmer's death as he was joining a demonstration. Chun Jae-hwan, a chairman of an emergency measures committee in the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, blamed a migrant workers' law which the government and National Assembly are currently discussing. Moon Kyung-sik, a chairman of the National Farmers Federation, said, "A fight is the only way for laborers and farmers to survive." Laborers and farmers marched into Gwanghwamun after the assembly was over. MTU also joined this nationwide movement and held a fundraising campaign for Anwar. On the other hand, on December 8th, the Korean Federation of Trade Unions went on a one-day general strike to support the introduction of the law to secure migrant workers' rights. The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions had ceremonies for the departure of the strike, followed by each labor union group, and held a general strike assembly in front of the National Assembly building. The Ministry of Labor said that 53 companies and 25,000 people from Kia Motors and other metalworking industrial labor unions joined this strike. Here is the next news item. Babies of illegal stayers can acquire Korean nationality. The Korean Nationality Act may change dramatically if birthplace, in addition to bloodline, is included in the definition of Korean nationality. On December 1st, Ju Sung-young of the Grand National Party Hannara is going to introduce the revised bill of the Korean Nationality Act to the regular session of the National Assembly. According to the revised bill, anyone who was born in Korea can acquire Korean citizenship regardless of the nationality of the parents. The parents also can acquire Korean citizenship when they have a child of Korean nationality. Additionally, when a baby is born to parents of Korean nationality, the baby may acquire Korean nationality regardless of birthplace. If this law is passed, a child of illegal workers can both acquire Korean nationality and legalize the stay of the parents. Ju Lee-won said, "This law can solve the problems of low birth rate and population decrease. It also suits the international way of thinking in this global era." Next comes the local migrant workers' news. Companies in Gyeongnam still infringe upon industrial trainees' human rights. Amidst continuous complaints about the infringement of these rights, the Gyeongnam Migrant Workers Center had a December 1st press conference about the infringement of industrial trainees' rights and demanded preparation of a measure. According to the Migrant Workers Center, a certain company in Gyeongnam deducted 17,000 to 20,000 won from monthly pay as health insurance money, but in fact did not even register 2 of their trainees for health insurance with the National Health Insurance Corporation. In addition, this company hasn't paid the allowance for a monthly one-day leave of absence or any other allowances that the Labor Standards Act requires. The company, which cannot employ migrant workers, hired a trainee who was later punished for being an undocumented worker and was detained for 20 days before being released. In related news, according to an August survey of 165 migrant workers in Gyeongnam, 58% said they experienced a serious infringement of human rights using mockery and abuse, and 55.4% of them said working environments are bad. The next item of news. The 10th of December was the 57th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Day of Human Rights ceremonies at the NHRC. In a Human Rights Day ceremony, people and organizations with distinguished service in improving human rights were given a Human Rights Award. The participants gave a reading of the Declaration of Human Rights together to rethink its meaning. During this ceremony, 10 members of MTU made a surprise demonstration against the crackdown of migrant workers. In related news, Minga-hyup, the Family Movement Conference to practice democratization, held the 20th anniversary Human Rights Conference, A Violet Handkerchief. Since 1989, this concert has been held every year. This year, many pop singers performed in the concert for free, and the representative of migrant workers read the Declaration of Human Rights with other participants. The 18th of December is Global Migrant Workers' Day, and events will be held everywhere. Migrant workers will have an assembly and a street parade to demand ratification of a UN international agreement and secure the migrant workers' rights to work. They have also prepared a cultural performance, which will be followed by a joint night event with migrant workers at Cheoldo Wedding Hall at 6 p.m. In addition to this, a street campaign will be held in Incheon's Dongam Station at 12 p.m. with a cultural performance in Korea Migrant Workers Human Rights Center beginning at 3:30 p.m. The 5th Migrant Workers Korean Speaking Contest will be held in the Bucheon Migrant Workers House at 2 p.m. In Busan, there will be a Migrant Workers' Day commemorative event in Labor Welfare Grand Hall. On December 7th, MWTV held a symposium about the foundations of migrant workers and media environments in order to commemorate Migrant Workers' Day. In this symposium, co-representatives of MWTV, Mabub and Che Moon-chul, a public relations leader from MNTV, and Jung Soo-kyung from Seongso Community Radio, presented in regards to migrant workers' media activities and discussed upcoming problems awaiting solutions. That's it for the 13th of December Migrant Workers News. You can also watch the news through our website, www.mwtv.or.kr. I'm Melissa Ko. Thank you for watching.